This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and you know how all smartphones seem to be all alike these days? Well, here's something totally different. This is the Nubia Red Magic 3. It's a gaming smartphone. Did you know you needed a gaming smartphone? It's not the only one. ASUS has done that. Obviously, Razer has made their own smartphone. So this one, what's kind of cool about it, besides the fact is it has a very unusual design, and though it's named Red Magic, this happens to be black, but it will be available in red and also a camouflage color, is the fact that if you notice it kind of raises up in the center, that's because there's a fan inside for optimal cooling. Okay, gimmick, maybe. 90 hertz display, but only in games. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But you get a Snapdragon 855. You got either 8 or 12 gigs of RAM. You've got pretty fast UFS 2.1 storage inside. You have a really ginormous OLED display. This is about as big as the OnePlus 7 Pro here, 6.65 inches. And it starts at $479. We're going to look at it now. So the Red Magic 3 kind of reminds me of the OnePlus of old, when they were selling phones around $500 that had a whole lot of horsepower, usually not the highest resolution displays. In the old days, they weren't OLED, that sort of thing. Well, that's what's going on here. $479, like I said, starting price. That gets you 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. They will have a camouflage model with 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of internal storage. That fast Snapdragon 855, which is the fastest processor you can get right now. This is all pretty good looking stuff, right, for the price. And the OLED display is about the same size as the OnePlus 7 Pro, which also means this is one of the biggest and heaviest phones. 215 grams. This is almost a half a pound, 7.6 ounces. You could say, oh, poor weak little lady. No, not really that. But believe me, you hold this up for a long time in your hand. You have pockets in pants that don't have really tight waistbands, and your pants start dragging down, which might be fashionable, but hey, that's what I'm talking about. It's big, it's heavy. But then again, it's super immersive when you're watching videos too. And you have that really big OLED display. Now the resolution isn't as high as the OnePlus 7 Pro, but it's still pretty high. And effectively it's 387 ppi. You're going to be hard pressed to see individual pixels or anything like that. It's OLED. It has 2 color profiles. It has the Vivid one, which is the default, and sRGB. Neither of them are super color accurate. The whites look a little bit towards the blue side, but it's pretty zingy. It's pretty nice. It looks great when you're playing videos and when you're playing games. I have no complaints there. To make it sound even more awesome, because there are awesome things about this, it has a 5,000 milliamp battery. That is one of the largest you're going to find in a phone. And that means that I really, unless you are playing PUBG and Fortnite for hours on end, just normal use, it's really hard to kill this thing in a day and a half of actual use to 2 days, which means you use it all day. You go to bed, you don't plug it in the charger, you get up the next day, you still have some juice going so you can get through part of the next day. By today's standards, it's pretty good. And it supports Qualcomm Quick Charge. Phone's available in the United States and Canada at the pricing that I mentioned. I believe the higher-end camouflage model with more RAM and more storage will be $599, but yeah. And it's available in the EU, and in the UK, I believe it's £419, so not bad there. 2-year warranty in the EU, because that's what the EU requires. 1-year warranty in the US and Canada, because that's what the US and Canada require. Now, Nubia was founded several years ago by ZTE, a much bigger company that you probably heard of, and political and espionage paranoia aside, they're pretty established. They've made a lot of phones for the US market. They're not noobs. Now, several years ago, they sold off part of the interest to other investors. So now they are a minority investor at 49-point-something%. So that's who the company is, for those who aren't familiar with it. This is an unlocked phone and a dual SIM phone. So you can put any SIM card you want in there. Now it does support CDMA as well as GSM. It's 4G LTE. And because there's just way too many bands to ever say, there it is on screen for the EU and the North American version. So look up your carrier, see what the bands are. There you have it. I did test it with a Verizon SIM since it does support CDMA, and I got voice and I got 3G. I couldn't get 4G LTE in the Dallas area. Now, Verizon doesn't use as many LTE bands as some of the GSM carriers, so this is a little confusing to me, but that means a caveat if you're buying this to use with Verizon. If you're AT&T, T-Mobile, or any other GSM carriers in the United States, you should be all set. It's a pretty healthy band selection. It is an official Android 9.0 Pie phone. What I mean by official is the fact that it has the Google Play Store and all the Google apps, so it's not some, dodgy sort of thing going on there. And it's a very clean, near stock Android experience. They have made the icons a little bit more square, and that's about it. There's no duplicate apps, there's no bloatware on here. The only thing you have are their really small customizations. Well, one is small. You have the LED strip on the back, RGB LED, woohoo! So you can control that using a setting in the Android settings cluster. And then there's the game mode 2.0, game space 2.0. So you enable that, and then it has a game launcher. So you only get to use that when you're going to launch a game. Get the idea? So there it has controls for actually the fan. Yes, it has a fan. Yes, if you turn it on, you'll hear it, not super loud, not like a laptop fan by any means, but you'll hear it, and you can control the screen refresh. So we can go from the normal 60 hertz like every other phone to 90 hertz. It's not possible outside of this game space to do 90 hertz. So don't expect that super silky smooth scrolling you see on the OnePlus 7 Pro, where it does 90 hertz everywhere. It has a headphone jack. I know y'all are going to be thrilled about that, so yes, it does. And it has the usual USB-C port, which they say is USB 3.0. Usually these USB-C ports on phones are not a 3.0, so yay that. So it's pretty cheap. What aren't you getting? You get a back fingerprint scanner, yes. There's no facial recognition for login. It's not a fancy in-display fingerprint scanner. And some of those little things you come to expect from a phone. If you tap on the screen when it's sleeping, it does nothing. If you want it to turn on, you actually have to hit the power button. Now, they are shipping the phone, so we have the shipping version of the software, I would assume, at this point. But I still notice sometimes it would ignore screen presses, just randomly and oddly. And it's Gorilla Glass 2.5D. There is a slight curve on the edges. The side bezels are very small. I was trying very hard to not let my fingers wrap around the edges. So there's a couple of little bugs to work out. There's no water resistance or dust resistance rating here, and it does not support wireless charging. Not surprising in this price range, and also given the fact that it has a metal back, it can't support wireless charging. It has an ambient light sensor, and it's about as dysfunctional as a phone from 5 years ago. Pretty much, it always wants to run exceptionally dim. There's no adjustment for your preference. Like every other ambient light sensor today, it also takes into account where you drag the brightness slider. Nope, not here. And you're not getting multiple cameras on the back. You're getting a single camera, and it sounds like a great camera. It's the same Sony sensor that's used in the OnePlus 7 Pro, which wasn't among the best cameras we've seen, but it has more to do with software and firmware for OnePlus. But here it is again, that 48 megapixel main and only camera in this case. And the software, it's not bad actually to use, the settings and all that sort of thing. I've seen one or two lost in translation moments, but other than that, it has some interesting features like experimental 8K video recording, and believe me, it's at about 5 frames per second. You can see the example on screen, so not quite there yet, but it does do 4K at 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second and all that sort of thing. In low light, it actually does pretty good. There's a lot of image processing going on. You can see smoothing and color enhancing and brightening, but overall, it looks fairly pleasing. If you're taking outdoor shots, they're pretty crispy. They're artificially crispy. It's at the same time over sharpened and over smooth, and a lot of contrast. But it has a certain look that, you know, if you're a photo maven, you're not going to probably like it. But as a consumer, you might say, that's not bad looking. It's a little Instagram. It's a little super crispy. It's not bad. Now, even when shooting in 48 megapixel mode, and you can do that instead of the interpolated 12 megapixel where it does pixel binning, takes every 4 pixels, picks the best one to make a 12 megapixel image. If you use that 48 megapixel mode, you figure you should be able to go to town with digital zoom a little bit. No. Oh, no, 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 no. I took it to the zoo, a perfect place to zoom, and well, you can see an example on screen and then a crop of it. I don't know what exactly they're doing there, but it looks almost like a bas relief or some weird photo effect on there, and there is not much photo data there. So there's that. If you're into that whole telephoto lens experience, you get a Pixel 3a XL or a phone that has a telephoto lens on it. There's a 16 megapixel front camera with an f2.0 lens. The rear lens is f1.7. And it's okay. It, by default, does this beauty shot thing, you know, where it smooths you out. And boy, I look almost watercolory. And yeah, there it is. Okay, so how about gaming, right? Well, I've played Fortnite on this. I've played PUBG, Asphalt 9, all those sort of things. And it performs very well. And honestly, it has vapor cooling and all this sort of thing. I don't know that it really needs any of that. Phone gaming is fairly well optimized in terms of the programs. It's not like I've seen phones overheating and dropping frames. So yeah, it's a little bit more of a gimmick and an enthusiast thing, just like the gaming dock connector, so you can have a little stand with speakers on, all that. So it performed pretty well. I did see occasional stutters in Asphalt 9. I have seen that on other phones. That's Asphalt 9 being Asphalt 9, probably more than anything else. The games look good. It's a huge screen. It performs fine. So well, obviously, yes, it can game and do everything else pretty smoothly. It's not stuttery. It's not weird. It's a pretty clean Android experience. Speaking of speakers, it has two front-facing stereo speakers, and my God, are they loud. They are as loud as some 13-inch Ultrabooks. The sound is pretty decent, too. There's bass there, and the treble is not irritating and hissy or anything like that, so it's a gaming phone. You expect gaming sound. You got it with this one. So that's the Red Magic 3. A gaming smartphone, do we need one? I don't know, but this is an awful lot of phone for the money, and that's obviously the attraction. It needs a little refinement, though, before I get super duper excited, but they're definitely on the right track here, and it is a pretty good buy. With a 1-year warranty in the US, a 2-year warranty in the EU. There it is. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.